Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Panel 8, Forging Ahead with Speed, Transitioning to New Technologies at the Pentagon. Please welcome to the stage Ms. Carla Babb of Newsmax and our distinguished panelists.
Well, hello, everybody. I am Carla Babb, the National Security Correspondent for Newsmax. This is my first time moderating a panel at Reagan, so normally I would be pretty nervous about this, but I'm not because I have such a great panel right here. I have the Army Chief General Randy George, I have Dan Jablonsky, CEO of Ursa Major, I have Senator Rounds over there from South Dakota, and I have the CEO of Lockheed, Jim Takelet, my goodness, sorry. Guess I am a little nervous after all. But it's great to see you guys here. We are going to be talking about forging ahead with speed, transitioning to new technologies at the Pentagon, rapid shifts in AI, next-gen systems. They're all redefining what it takes to move promising technologies from development into operational use. And as the requirements are evolving, the department now has to figure out how we're going to identify these capability gaps and align our acquisition priorities with what's needed in contested environments. We need to modernize acquisition pathways, and I'm staring at you, Senator Rounds, because we need congressional oversight. Amen. And we need investment to accelerate transition. So, and I want to remind everybody that I have this handy-dandy access to your questions. So I've been told that you guys know how to submit questions, and if you want to submit some, I will be asking these wonderful gentlemen your questions as well. But before we go into the tech panel, I do want to first ask a little bit of news of day just on the national security strategy that was just released. And since we are here at the Reagan National Library, which represents a president who significantly contributed to the fall of the Soviet Union through a strategy of military buildup and also anti-communist movements, and through rhetoric that rejected the idea of moral equivalence between the United States and the USSR. Reagan asserted a clear moral battle between freedom and totalitarianism, which he believed was crucial. But there are concerns in this NSS that just came out that the Trump administration lays out a very different approach on Russia. It says, and I'm quoting it, many Europeans regard Russia as an existential threat, but it does not explicitly say that Russia is a threat to the United States. It does not mention that Russia attacked Ukraine, and it appears to put the blame on Western Europe, not Russia, for the lack of a peaceful resolution to the war in Ukraine. This comes as the majority of Americans, according to a survey put out by the Reagan National Defense Forum, Americans overwhelmingly responded that they want Ukraine to be victorious. And the policy director here at the Reagan Institute says that Americans, quote, perceive Russia as an adversary and they perceive Ukraine as an ally. So Senator Rounds, I'm going to start with you. Is the Trump administration making a strategic blunder here in the NSS? Do you, like the majority survey, view Russia as the aggressor and the adversary?
Well, I think the idea that the president is trying to lay out is, once again, peace through strength. And I think the secretary today made it clear that they want to reinvigorate the Reagan approach, which is peace through strength. I agree with all of that. The challenge that you're asking is well, what about Russia? I know that they focused on China primarily and about the challenges in the Indo-Pacific region, which is in front of everybody's minds right now. I've shared in the past, and I continue to believe that Russia really doesn't want peace. I still think that Russia really doesn't want peace. I should say Mr. Putin really doesn't want peace because he thinks he can win against Ukraine. I think Ukraine is putting up a marvelous fight. I think the vast majority of us in the United States Senate feel that we should do whatever we can to assist them. We're not interested in putting our young men and women in harm's way, but anything that we can do to assist Ukraine in the defense of their freedom, that's probably the right thing to do. So I'm not going to second guess what the president is trying to do with regard to his focus, which is on rebuilding the military. I think this is a great lead-in for additional funding, for additional military capabilities that we know we have to have. And so I think we should be focusing on what the president is trying to get done here, which is peace through strength. Be so powerful, be so strong that the adversaries decide that it's just not the right day to have that effect. But there's one more piece in there that I think I should also tell you, and that is I think the president right now, in the middle of negotiations, probably does not want to be seen as anything other than an arbiter in terms of trying to find peace in Europe right now. And perhaps because of this particular product coming out right now, maybe is not the best time to be going in and specifically charging Russia as an adversary when he's trying to be a person stopping a war. So I'm going to give him a lot of leeway on that just because of the current events around trying to find a peaceful solution there. And we wish them all the luck in the world at getting it done. I'm just not optimistic. I just simply don't believe that Mr. Putin really wants to find peace.
General George, to you, he kept using the word adversary. Do you find Russia to be our adversary? And you were just in Ukraine recently. Can you tell us a little bit about what you saw, what you did, what you learned from that trip?
Sure. Yeah, I spent about 3.5 days with all of their drone brigades, with a lot of their units, visited tech companies, talked to their Minister of Defense, and there's obviously a lot we can learn from the Ukrainians. And everybody gets really focused on just the drones sometimes and the technology, but how they're organizing for the fight that they're doing, and coming back. And we are trying to take those lessons on a near daily basis. A lot of that is feeding into it, and I know we're going to talk about it the rest of this panel on what we're doing to change. But I think it kind of reinforces what Senator Rounds was talking about on how we have to, which is what I was encouraged about with the NSS, is that we are going to have to build up our industrial base. We're going to have to move at speed. We're going to have to cut through the bureaucracy to do that, and that's exactly what we're doing. And it's why we have done. Secretary Hegseth announced the acquisition reform, and we are already well on a pathway to do that.
So let's talk a little bit about how we do that. The Army just put out their plans for sweeping acquisition transformations. Sure. It's considered, will you back this up? Is it the biggest shakeup to Army buy-in process in recent years?
I think it's much needed. I don't know if we've put an adjective in there, but basically what we're doing is traditionally you would have requirements, and we're trying to change first how we do requirements. There's a lot of things that industry knows how to solve better than we do, and so we've done this, for example, with our network, and just tried to describe what it is that we want, the network to be able to do, and we've gotten all their engineers involved in helping us do it. But typically that goes over, and then you give it to the acquisition, then it goes over to contracting, and it takes 5 to 7 years to go through this process, and then it takes that long to produce things. And what we really want to get is where all the trade space are. I think we've proven that with some systems. We've fielded next-gen squad weapon, and we're already on our 4th iteration in about 18 months. So we have changed that based on soldier feedback, and I think that that's what we're going to have to do. The other thing that we're trying to do is get a lot of more commercial companies, basically undo the Last Supper and get a lot of people back involved with this. And, we're going to unveil a tank, new M1E3 that everybody said would take 6 or 7 years to build. And it's going to, we already have one that's finished, and we're going to have a platoon that's out with formations next year. But besides General Dynamics, it's Caterpillar, SAPA, Anduril's been involved, but I think we need to get commercial industry involved in this to move at pace.
So reducing the consolidation that we started in the 90s after that
I
Last
think
Supper.
part of this is, the biggest part of this is risk. I think that everybody, with the process is built to go through and, every step of the way. The other thing we're doing is going directly, we've done this with Transforming in Contact, where we basically have engineers, companies inside of our formations, seeing the problems that we're trying to solve, and then making corrections to whatever the things that they're giving us, the drones or autonomous systems.
Mm-hmm. Let's bring the CEOs in. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that the Chief is correct. We need transformational change in the way our military operates and the relationship between the Department of War and industry, and broadly speaking, industry. And so what I look at this through a lens of an engineering problem, right? So we have escalating threat or escalating demand for a typical business. You have technology moving at the fastest rate in human history, both digital and physical technology, and you have a relatively fixed resource to address this equation. And the only way to change the outcome, which is a diminishing outcome of effectiveness, is to change the system. It's unlikely that we will be able to materially change any three of these factors, and therefore systemic change is what's required. And so what we're doing at Lockheed Martin, and I spent 20 years building telecom and technology networks in the commercial world. Started out in the Air Force, did some time in the aerospace industry, commercial side mainly, and then went into telecom and came back as chairman and CEO of Lockheed. We need to take all the lessons of the last 20 years that the commercial industries have developed and port them into this industry. And the way to do that, in my view, is to make the defense and aerospace industry as much like the tech sector as we can. And how do we do that? I think you start with the service approach to a business. A technology business like telecommunications, AI, cloud services, they are services. There are things that go into creating the service, hardware, firmware, and software. But the way that those industries have developed is they take a service, and I use an example of Google Maps. It was pretty rudimentary when it came out. But every 3 to 6 weeks, it got better by ingesting data, making corrections, having a better wireless network along the way, better chipsets that you could process the mapping faster and all the traffic issues and data. And so every 3 to 6 weeks, that system got better, and now it's pretty darn good. And we should look at our services, and I don't mean the military services as you know them, but the services we try to help the government provide are things like surface warfare on the sea, sinking ships, that's the service. Air superiority, shooting down airplanes, that's a service. And if we were able to reorient our industry to keep the best of the vertical kind of production system that we have, and then fuse that through the Z-axis, I call it, with a mission technology roadmap, then we would be able to insert, whether it's hardware, whether it's network, whether it's a software, an API, a new vendor, into that system at any point in time when the maturity of the technology is there to do it and aid that technology roadmap to fill in something you talked about earlier, which is a mission gap. So I'll give you one quick example and maybe let Dan give his examples. We build the HIMARS vehicle and the missiles that go on it predominantly. And it is designed originally to hit a stationary target. Well, we looked at it through a lens to say, we could make that system more effective to close long-range kill chains, not just for stationary targets like command posts, but for a moving target like a transporter erector launcher on a road that's moving. It's not a fixed target that you can just put a GPS coordinate and it'll hit it. So what we did was we took satellite data to identify moving targets of interest. We took an F-35 sensor system to aim it towards the target to get a weapons quality track. We sent that up back through the satellites, back into the HIMARS vehicle using a component that we invented and put on it, and a network that we created. And now the HIMARS can hit a moving target. The problem is there's no system in the acquisition organization to be able to buy that service, to buy that improvement. And that's something that really has to change in the acquisition system.
And we've got legislation, part of the NDAA, pointed directly at that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And just to follow up on that, you know, you talked about the HIMARS, and you have stuff in Ukraine that has been used. And when we saw that initial problem with Ukraine in 2022, the problem was scaling up fast enough to get them what they needed. So how do you scale up in some of these systems and equipment? What do you need for the Army to do and for Congress to do to help you scale up faster?
Right, and just to be clear, my systems are not in Ukraine yet.
Well, the SRM.
We're building things that will be able to be used there as well, and hypersonics as well. But I think, like Jim was saying, and that's a good example of where I think the thrust lies here, which is you need modularity. Which, if you have modular systems, you can mix and match depending on how that threat changes. You need flexibility because the battlescapes are changing very, very quickly. So you can't get locked into requirements that are 7 years old because some procurement officer said that's what you need. What you have to do is say, well, actually what China's doing today is this, and I know these things we wrote at some point, but you got to flip them. You got to flip them fast because you got to get there, and you need speed. You can't think about things in 3, 5, 7-year, 10-year cycles. I mean, yes, you need to do that in terms of capital allocation, but not in terms of how products come off the line. Those products have to get there, they have to get there fast, and they got to be in the hands of the warfighters or they're just not useful. And if they don't overmatch a Chinese or a Russian or whoever's capability, it's also not a good thing because then it's blood and treasure and you don't have enough of these things. So the way we're thinking about this, and we're partnering across the ecosystem. We're partnering with the primes. They've got wonderful assets, and they've developed technologies that are phenomenal. Like the F-35 factory in Texas, if you haven't been to something like this, it is a national treasure, right? Like, I want something like that, right? But these factories, that's a great example. As we need them for munitions, as we need them for shipyards, as we need them for hypersonic capabilities and space capabilities, they have to be built on first principles now from, kind of 2025, 2030 manufacturing principles. So they should be agile, they should be additive, they should be flexible, and you should be able to build lots of stuff in them so you don't have to lay capital in the ground every time you want to change something, which means then that gives the military a lot more strategic advantages here and a better cost point as the ecosystem changes.
Talk a little bit about the agile funding capabilities that you say that you want. Looking at getting capabilities from Congress instead of specific weapons. You talked about that.
So we're getting ready to do that with, and drones is a perfect example. I think it gets to a little of the conversation. I don't think you're going to have a program or record where you buy some drone and think you're going to have it for 20 years. Things are going to change more rapidly. I also think, even for missiles, I think cost is going to go down because of 3D printing and the things that we can do and how manufacturing is changing. So the problem is if we get locked into budget lines where we get told to buy this one particular item and buy it for the next 20 years, it doesn't matter if the requirements changed, you're locked into that. So I think that's the discussion we need to have. That's why I think we need to have more people involved in this space. And what we're trying to do is just say, hey, we want to spend this much money on drones, or we want to spend this much money on long-range munitions, and just have a little bit more flexibility. So I think that has grown over time. I do think that there's a way, I'm looking down at Senator Rounds, because I do think there's a way, what we do is actually, all of that stuff, I could bring it in here. I could probably have my guys bring up right now an iPad and show you. We can show you where everything is at, where we're spending it, where the program is at. Because we want to have oversight. We need to have that on how we're spending that. And I just think with the digital tools nowadays, you can do that.
But the concern for industry is the predictability. So how do you square that? How do you solve that problem to give the industry leaders the predictability?
I think it depends on what we're doing. I'll use ISV as an example, which is our soldiers love that vehicle, infantry squad vehicle. It is, and we're buying that. It's basically just a small portion for General Motors because it's based on the vehicles that they're already, Chevy Colorado, that they're already producing. They upgraded the engine, they upgraded the transmission, they made changes to it by coming out with our soldiers, but they're still producing for the public. So I think that it depends on what the systems are. We probably have to it's a little more of a discussion when we start talking about long-range missiles and doing things like that, but we are looking at how do we have common platforms, and then maybe the things that are only changing are the missiles that are inside that. So
you're nodding, Senator.
Oh, absolutely. Look, acquisition reform is critical, but it's got to start. Congress has got to start doing its job again. I mean, we're still on a continuing resolution. How is the military supposed to be responding when we're doing something that is now over basically 2 years old in the way it was set up in the first place? Number one, we got to fix our appropriations process. I personally think we ought to be doing appropriations every 2 years on a budget that's set up for 2 years, and then take the midterm and actually do due diligence, find out what we've got to be modifying, and if you got to do a supplemental, do a supplemental, but give some kind of continuity here so that the forces can actually see what it is we're doing. And then along with that, a lot of the stuff that we're doing right now or that we're ordering right now, we ought to be, number one, listening to what they've got to say and then putting it in play, but giving them the flexibility so that as things change rapidly, that they can modify, just give us notice that they're making a modification to it, but utilize the funds for basically the same system, even if it's been upgraded or changed or a new capability's been added. And then the other piece on this is the attritable stuff that we've got right now, we should be looking at it just like a service, just like something that is, you buy it, you pay for it, and it's gone, and you're moving on to the next thing. But the drones that we're going to be buying, literally thousands and thousands of these things in certain situations.
1 million, according to the Army, in the next 2 to 3 years.
But this is the kind of stuff that we have to have a purchasing system, an acquisition system that recognizes that over a period of years. The other piece is as these technologies change, you'll have a whole bunch of engineers that'll be working on a particular project, and then they get their work done. Now, what are you going to do with the engineers we've moved past that part of the project? How do you allow them to then come back up and say, there's another project down here that we really should start on? How does the department actually come back in and allow a company that has a system set up to move from one project to another and get the feedback about when these engineers might very well be terminated, and then you start all over again building them up? Those are the types of things that we have to have, things like this forum right here, where contractors and the folks who are utilizing their products can, number one, learn about what products are available on the market today that might be less expensive than if they were ordered specifically. And number two, where there are specific items that have to be done to where they can tell the industry, this is what I need. What are you going to do to try to find a path forward that can be done quickly, effectively, and get on the thing? And then how long, and then provide them with an extended period of time in which they can know that they'll have a line open. It's like 155 shells. We order so many of them, and then what are they supposed to do? Shut it down? Which they do. Mm-hmm. Well, that's crazy. Right. I mean, you've got to have an ongoing process. We are not set up to do that. We need to revise that.
I think the biggest thing, and I think this goes hand in hand with that, is we've kind of, because we haven't been pacing against an adversarial threat like China, we've gotten used to being, for the larger systems, a requirements-based system, not a capabilities-based environment. And so if you're trying to follow, nobody's from Boeing here, but like Air Force One and all the requirements that go into that, every time you have to get exactly something, it just takes a lot longer. Any changes become very complicated and it's hard. But if you say generally, like, look, these are the capabilities, and you put that authority inside, hopefully now it's the PAE system. I think the Army just set it up with the fires and controls down in Huntsville. And you start to give people authorities and the ability to make reasoned, fast decisions with appropriate oversight, but reasoned, fast decisions, you're going to get a much better system built. And it's going to go faster because you can hold somebody accountable for those things rolling off the line. And I think one of the things that excites me about the pockets of the current environment is like Golden Dome. General Gutlein has authorities inside his purview with Golden Dome right now that are very similar to what Admiral Rickover had when the nuclear Navy got established. And if you think about that as a really good example of something that went really fast, that was technically hard, that came in at price points that were really stomachable back in that time frame, and we were able to build that industrial base from something that didn't exist anymore, that was really exciting. And so that's a perfect example of doing something like this, and you can make the legislation and the authorities match into the outcome that you want.
Could I just make one comment on what Senator Rounds brought up, and Dan and I were talking about this, but I also think on manufacturing, and this is how you help with the engineers, is if you have the ability to build companies in a modern industrial line where you can build not just one type of missile, but you could build several different types of missiles and do those things. I mean, I think that's what we got to look at. I mean, that's something that I saw in Ukraine. They had a lot of the engineers that could work on several different things, and I think that that kind of capability is here today to start making those kind of changes. That we haven't had that flexibility in the past. We've got digital engineering now. I just think it's changing for the better.
So I keep hearing modularity is the future, but how do you actually make that a reality? How do you get the parts to talk to each other?
You define what the interface control devices have to look like, the interface control systems. And on both sides of that, you say, hey, do as best as you can to create the most functionality here. But when it mates up here, this is the rule set.
Yeah.
And that means that like if they've got a front end for a system and they want to change it from a land base to a sea base to this kind of secret to that kind of secret to EW to high kinetic, but it needs a certain type of motor that's tunable, and you're like, hey, build a lot of those types of motors that are tunable, and then it can go on to lots of different kind of systems.
Yeah, I mean, the term of art in the tech space for that is standard-based open architecture system, which is something we actually had to do for ourselves in Lockheed Martin first, because we have 4 divisions that do 4 very different things. But if you're going to create a mission technology roadmap for a service or a mission or an activity you need to do, we actually figured out we needed assets and knowledge and engineers from all 4 of our divisions. So we came up with something I have one patent for, which is it's called 5G.mil. And it's the open architecture standard that everyone in Lockheed Martin has to use to design to, so that we can actually connect that satellite feed to the F-35, to the HIMARS, even though we're in 3 different divisions of our company, we do that. That's something we've been advocating, Senator, for 4 years to get into the NDAA, that the department take that on, that concept on, and convene a standards body of many companies to be able to actually come up with this, so we're all working from the same song sheet that Dan just referred to.
Okay.
I think we're doing that on small, like Jim says, I think we're doing it on small cases. We've done it with the tank, and we've gotten together with different people, but I agree we need to do that more broadly.
And the Air Force
more broadly.
Is pretty far along too,
Yeah.
Chief. Yeah.
I want to talk about that tank, but first, before we start getting into the specific technologies, we have a question from the audience. It says it's been repeated over and over that there needs to be transformational change at the Pentagon, which is what the Army is trying to do. However, bureaucracy at the Pentagon is notorious for screeching all potential change to a halt. So when should we expect to see meaningful reform?
I think we're already seeing it in the Army, and I think I always tell everybody, been asked this before, is, come back in 6 months and see what we're doing. We're about to transform 21 brigades from IB, Infantry Brigade combat teams, to mobile brigades that have drones, EW system, next-gen squad weapon, autonomous systems, and doing all that. So, and it's struggled a little bit with continuing resolutions and funding lapses and stuff, but moving through that and producing things. So, we're collapsing business systems. I think we've gone from 700 down to 175 or something to do that. So, I think we can do that. I always kind of refer to the frozen middle. I think every company probably has that. Everybody has to deal with that a little bit. And I just think right now, and with Secretary Driscoll, we have everything aligned and we're moving out.
Let's talk about, because I want to get Senator Rounds back in, let's talk about AI. That's something you talk about a lot. The survey that came out this week by Reagan said that Americans are split on who is winning on AI. 30% say the US is winning, 29% say China is winning, and about 33% say it's equal. What do you think, and what do we need to do to accelerate the use of AI in the military?
We have the edge right now, but we have to be worrying about who has the edge in 3 years and in 5 years. And in order to do that, we have to have the people, we have to have the compute power, and we've got to have the energy. And right now, the thing that we win when we talk about China, we have the people. We've got the brightest minds out there, and we want to continue to have them want to come in and participate in the United States. And so that part we're winning on. Now, they've got more people than we do, but we've got some really bright, innovative people, and we are ahead with regard to the actual developers that are using it. But our ability to actually put everything together has been very, very good. China's catching up, no question about it. But the second piece on this, and that is the compute power, we've got that as well right now, but once again, China is pushing hard. The discussion right now is how do we keep compute power away from China while we continue to develop it. And that's one that, as a matter of policy, we have to decide how do we keep it here and yet at the same time invite the rest of the world to participate in the standards and for lack of a better way, the rails that we create here using our companies. And then finally, and the one that we're not winning on, is on energy. They produce more than 2.5 times more energy than we do. They have the capability of producing energy because of more power plants and so forth coming online a lot faster than we can do so right now. That's the area that we have to be working on, because if you want to win in the area of AI development, you absolutely have to have the power to do so. We're going to need a huge amount of additional power in the next 3 to 5 years, and we're not bringing it on as fast as we need to bring it on. We need all of the above on energy production, but we clearly, that's going to be the area that we're going to need the most help on is AI developing, but using developing enough energy in order to stay ahead of the adversaries, our competitors in China, with regard to the amount of power it takes to actually power those databases.
Anybody else want to jump in?
I just think when you talk about AI generally, like this is a huge topic, right? There's lots of components to it, and we should be thoughtful about which parts of AI we really do care about and which ones we want to move fast and which ones we don't. Like China's using AI for social control. I kind of don't want to advance in that area and say that'd be a really good thing. But the one place that I think we think about in industry is unstructured data sets. So not large language models that refine what's going to type next in your phone and those kinds of things, but unstructured data sets that take things like real world data, geospatial data, or real world feedback from mechanical systems, like everything, or mechanical, electromechanical systems, like everything moving on an F-35 and all the telemetry you get from that, and how we use AI to make those tools better, the factories better, the maintenance of those things better, the performance of them better. Like that's a great place to spend time and money. I'm not sure all AI is going into the same things, because I'm watching some of the same large language models try and solve the same problems sometimes.
And when we talk about autonomy, we've been talking about drones, I feel like I have to point out that last month, Lockheed, we just saw a pilot in an F-22 that was piloting a drone from the jet's cockpit for the first time. Mm-hmm. Is that the future, and how quickly can we expect to see that on the battlefield, ready to go?
So it's the future, and the future is now. So I'll just give you a couple examples. In the Red Sea, the U.S. Navy and commercial shipping was literally under attack from Houthi rebels. The Navy was considering withdrawing, or at least stepping back from where they normally would patrol, because the Houthis were firing not only ballistic missiles at the ships, which have an Aegis radar and combat control system, which we deliver. By the way, the first iterations of the Aegis were from like the 1960s, but it's been updated and iterated every couple of years, and it's quite effective. But it wasn't designed to deal with low-flying, slow-flying drones and cheap, low-flying cruise missiles, which were then a threat to the shipping and to the ships, the naval ships as well. And so the radar had a hard time discriminating the actual targets from anomalies in the atmosphere or the wave tops or other just non-targets. And we were getting from a point where of 40 readings that a radar operator was looking at, 2 of those would be real and 38 would be, not valid targets. You couldn't really use your munitions stores to shoot all 40 of those. So we needed to get it down to where, instead of 38 false targets, maybe there's 2. And you have 4 on the screen and 2 of them are false, and then you use algorithms to further refine that. The way we got from point A to point B on that was we took in all the Aegis data from all the ships in the Red Sea and all the targeting information they had, fed it into a Starlink system that sent it over to New Jersey, where we have our AI engine for the Aegis system. Every night we would calculate, based on using artificial intelligence, how to better differentiate using the Aegis system that was on the ship already, mm-hmm. to be much, much more accurate. And we did get it down from 38 false targets to 2. It took about a month to do that, but AI is being used today for that. The second thing that you referenced already is I asked the team, we don't have enough time to put the CCA or the drone wingman control system into the F-35 or the F-22 cockpit right now, but we have enough that we can put it on Apple Store tablet and get a knee strap and put it on the pilot's leg, and we can control 8 drones with the software we've developed on a tablet you can buy in the Apple store that has a single secure connection into the jet system, and we can control up to 8 CCAs like the one you just referenced with a pilot's fingertip and providing a mission, a target, and then we lets his finger off the tablet. That drone goes and does the mission. And that's all using artificial intelligence. So this is already happening. It is important to have all the elements that Senator Rounds identified. These are critical so that we can stay competitive in AI, but it's already happening. And the last one, because I don't want to leave General George out of
Hold
this.
on, well, let me follow up. So the Air Force can use that now. We are beyond the
You could
testing
use it today.
phase.
We're prototyping it, and then it's a matter of
Okay.
what's the acquisition
So when are we
system
actually
going
gonna
to do
see
with
it?
that?
Yeah, when are we going to see it in the Air Force?
Well, that's interesting because, again, there's no program of record for this advancement in the technology that came about, well after the F-22 was built. So this is something that we're self-funding right now. The whole tablet control system we self-funded. We got with General Atomics, I know some of the representatives are here, to get a hold of one of their drones and actually go do this. But we need to figure out how to create that agile acquisition system to do things like this.
I just don't think we have to, I'm not sure we need a big, long program. So along with what we're trying to do is you get some of those inside your formation. I think I think in the future, we're going to make contact with drones first. I do think we're going to, we are trying to be fast followers with AI, and we've just had an AI TTX. And it's going to help with logistics, it's going to help with admin, but it's going to be a big part of the kill chain in everything that we're doing. But the advantage of those drones is you're not going to have loss of life, and you can build those significantly cheaper than these great big platforms. And I just think that that's where we're going to have to go. So I don't think and if they're modular and you can update them, I don't think we have to buy them all. You buy some of them. What's often overlooked, I think, inside formations is you also have to learn. You have to upskill your people. You have to learn how you're fighting these systems. Right. How you're organized around them. And again, those were things that that I saw in Ukraine. They have changed how they go about doing these things, and we're going to have to do that as well. So the sooner we get them in our formations, I think the better.
I want to ask you, because we're talking about things that we want to see. Well, the troops have now. You've got the M1E3. The pre-prototype is supposed to be in the Army's hands this month. Do you have it? Has GD delivered it yet?
We do have it.
You
yes.
have it.
We have one of them. Yeah, we're going to put it at the Detroit Auto Show. I don't know if that's appropriate, but it's going to be out. It's going to be out there. It's going to be out there next month, and we're going to show it. And again, we'll have all the companies that were there with a part of it. It looks like if you get into the cockpit, it looks, and that's what I would call it, kind of a cockpit. With how it is. But we're also going to, the biggest test is taking it to our soldiers. So we're going to give it to a tank platoon, all 4 of them, and they're going to tell us, what it is that works, what doesn't, and it's modular. We can update the active protection system, the engine can be updated, all of those things, and we're looking at drastically reducing the weight. We've got a company working on quantum computing to figure out how we can continue to get the weight down. So we just can't get, wrapped into, I think the world has changed a lot, and we're just going to have to change with it.
Okay, let's talk about hypersonics if we can, because I know.
Before you get into that, just one last thought on the AI side of this thing here. I think sometimes the American public says, well, this is a passing fad, or it's not something that I really want to have be a part of my life. It's not going away. And the question is how do we appropriately manage it, and how do we control it using Western standards, and then how do we make sure that Americans see the value of it in the defense of their country, in ways that make the operation of government more efficient. I mean, just thinking in terms of using AI for auditing systems and so forth, we know Maven is a good example where it's actually doing things now to save us money. But then there's one more piece of this, and that's quality of life when it comes to healthcare, which is really going to sell the American public on just how valuable AI will be when we start talking about being able to solve drug problems more quickly, being able to address the issues of cancer, diabetes, and so forth at a lot faster rate than we can today. So this is a huge part of it. But on the military side, when we talk about a kill chain today, it's changing to a kill web, where you're literally going to have lots of people in space and in the air that are going to be observing. You're going to have lots of different ways of communicating from one to the other. And AI is going to be that thing that brings this all together, so that the guy that's got to make a decision about shooting at a particular object in a time of a crisis has lots of different tools available to him that we could not do without the incorporation of AI as an agent in that process.
And see, I told you guys we weren't going to have enough time to do all of this, but here we are. We've got about 11 minutes left. Before I ask another audience question, I want to turn to hypersonics. You know, when we talk about the competition with China, we're not doing so hot. A lot of people will say that China is winning the hypersonics race. Lockheed, I believe you just announced, was it this week that you've opened up a new hypersonics system integration lab in Huntsville?
Right.
Can you both please talk a little bit about what we need to do to get to a point where we're not falling behind China on hypersonics?
So General George's crew has a hypersonic missile launch vehicle and the first set of missiles that could be used today if we needed them. But we got to scale that up and produce them. That's a program that is going on. And so we'll be able to do that. The Chinese and Russians probably have more available capability right now in hypersonics than the US does. But we also are working on counter hypersonic technology too. So this will be another cat and mouse game where we're going to have to continue to work with the department and invest in the latest technology and get it as quickly as we can out there, because that's what the Russians and Chinese are going to do. So we need to get much faster at that cat and mouse game when it comes to hypersonics, General.
It's kind of one of these things where if they can hit further and faster than you can, that's a bad thing, boxer analogy. And so we need to, they've got some category leading things right now. They've got more of them than we do. And they can get to places and change the amount of time we get to make decisions they can shrink that down quite a bit. And they also change the calculus on survivability. So when we say hypersonic, we're not only talking about something that's really fast, Mach 5 plus, we're talking about something that's maneuverable in that environment in which is moving. So 3,800 plus miles an hour and maneuverable. And that changes the battlefield pretty quickly in terms of how far and fast you can hit somebody, or how far and fast they can hit you, and the level of survivability on that. So I think it's a really important thing to be working on. We're obviously, that's one of the key technologies we're working on. And we've been flying with a partner, Stratolaunch, on some of this for targets and test beds to be able to see what our systems do. But then the next piece of that is, can you do this, and can you do it affordably, and can you get it fielded into systems? Because if it's just science experiments over here, hey, that's cool, but that doesn't bring a capability to the warfighter.
Well,
and if you can't give enough of them, then that's not worth a lot either, because then the warfighter's like, should I use it once this time or not? You got to get a lot of these things.
Well, there are some startups like
ours.
Like Casleon, yes.
Yeah, we've flown multiple times hypersonically with Stratolaunch, and we were scheduled to fly a hypersonic yesterday, but we got pushed out because the ranges got shut down during the shutdown, and everything got backed out by like 90 days. So that, like at Reagan last year, I told my team, I said, I want to fly a hypersonic vehicle before Reagan next year, and I want to be able to go to Reagan and say we did it, and we haven't done it yet. But it's on the test stand. It's got over 250 full mission cycle tests, 250 tests, several of which have been full mission cycles, and it's ready to go down range, and it's ready to start flying.
Well, since you kind of teed me up to that, mentioning the government shutdown, we've been talking about all of this new tech and all these things that we want to do. And then we get in our own way. We have CRs all the time that are hindering the use of, the ability to advance our systems. We shut down for over a month. And, CRs are costing, I heard, $2 billion a month. Is that accurate? A CR?
I've heard as much as $5 billion.
$2 to $5 billion a month.
Yeah.
So
it would be a lot less expensive if we would simply do the appropriations process this year. We would spend less money than if we have a continuing resolution.
So here, you have an audience member. Tell our senator what CRs are doing in advancements of our new technology. How much is that hurting you guys?
I mean, I think Senator Rounds kind of summed it up earlier. I mean, the problem is you can't You can't go after the new starts. You can't make the changes. And I think, there's things that we need to continue to do. I'm all about is 2-year
A budget?
or longer. We're working on multi-year funding, over certain things where I think we know that we need to do it. So I think there's a little bit of work to do on both sides, but yeah, it puts us behind. And I think, I can't remember who it was this morning. Maybe it was OMB director was up here. The one thing you can't get back is time. And so, that's what every time it's like, hey, we got to get moving. And that's where I think it hurts us the most. And it's really hard on the organization too. I mean, you can imagine if you don't know, am I getting any money? Can I do this? Can I do that? So it's a lot of organizational toll, I think, too, trying to figure that out for us, for industry, really for everybody.
And there's an important irony here where, people think, oh, the defense industry is, Northrop Grumman, Lockheed Martin, Boeing Defense, et cetera. It's mostly medium and small businesses all across the United States.
Yeah.
And so you want to bring more of those in or bring more startups like Dan's company in, and you have this kind of business operation where your customer is not paying you. And actually, it's not the intent that they don't pay the invoices. There are no people in the building to pay the invoices. So these companies aren't going to be able to collect revenue and cash, and you want to bring more of them in to this industry. You're actually driving them away with these kind of behaviors on the government side, CRs, canceling programs, those kinds of things that, the way the FAR is written and implemented, it is a decrement to most companies in the country that are in the DIB, because 80 to 95% of their business is commercial, and 5 to 15 or 20% of their business will be for the Pentagon, and they're going to be like, wait, I'm going to invest or get into or get out of a product line or try something new with Dan. I don't know if I want to take that risk as a company because of things like this.
And that's how we see the supply chain shrinking. And then that causes problems. It just keeps piling up. In the last 5 minutes, I want to try to get 2 questions in. I want to talk about, and you guys just all jump in here, on drones. How is the Army going to get to 1 million drones in the next 3 years? And then with Lockheed, just to follow up on that, you focus on more expensive drones. How do you scale to also be able to provide what the Army needs?
Okay. So I'll real quickly, I come from a farming community. Farmers use drones, fire departments use drones, police departments use drones. We are not producing enough drones in this country, for all of that. And so that's part of what we want to be able to do. And we've been working this with the Hill on Sky Foundry, is what do we need to do in our industrial base to help, kind of as a public-private partnership to build the kind of things and help with brushless motors, wiring harness, goggles, the different antenna. What are the things that we can do to help that? I think we have, as far as the software, the innovation and all that will come. So this is back to, again, the NSS and the Defense Industrial Base. How do we grow that so that we have the ability to do that? And it's going to be the same thing on the Army's in charge of counter UAS. We've helped, Secretary Hegseth assigned us for counter UAS, and it's the same thing. We're going to have to be able to have the kind of materials that we can rapidly scale, do it very quickly, and I think it will help, with all of the businesses up here. So
Are
we
you
talk
solving
about the
that problem?
million. Yes, we are working very hard on that. Part of this is just getting after, and I think Senator Rounds mentioned this earlier, is like, what's the demand signal? And I think that's either industry needs a demand signal, and we got to get out there and do that.
Well, and then the critique is that we have these big, expensive counter UAS systems to knock out something that's costing a fraction to make. So how do you
We
fix that?
have, that's where I think you iterate and you don't buy. we're now, we have systems, there's kinetic systems right now where they're costing, 4,000 or 5,000, and they have a range of 40 to 50 kilometers. So which is,
Add on that.
we're moving in that direction very quickly.
Yeah, and I would say that there's a mission set which is infantry substitution or infantryman augmentation, which is General George is speaking to now. But a drone is not a drone is not a drone either. And so if you go to the other side of the spectrum and say, what is the mission I'm trying to get done? That's one, infantry, I'll call it infantry augmentation. But there's another one close to that, which is air evacuation, battlefield air evacuation. And what that brings into the equation is for any vehicle or autonomous system, there is the key elements of range, how far can it go, payload, how much can it carry, and survivability, can it live through getting to where it needs to go. And with the drone, counter drone, especially on the small tactical drones, that's going to be another cat and mouse game. But you still need, if we're going to do the air evacuation mission out of a contested logistics environment or resupply in a contested logistics environment, what we use today generally is a Black Hawk helicopter for that in the US Army, often. And the Black Hawk is big. It's got 2 pilots and usually 1 or 2 other crewmen in it. But what we've gone ahead and done, because you can be a big company and innovate too once in a while, is we've created something we call the U-60. And the U is the uncrewed UH-60 helicopter. And what that machine can do is it actually takes the entire cockpit out, gives you an additional loading space in the helicopter, and all the human systems come out, and it's much lighter, it can carry more, and you can now use that for contested logistics. And the thing about that is you don't need to buy a new helicopter to do this. You could actually reverse integrate this into the existing fleet. So there are going to be some new low altitude air vehicles coming into the Army. There may not be a need for all the legacy Black Hawks. You could actually convert these things, and $5 million is real money, but you could actually take $5 million and convert each of these things to an autonomous drone, and we can fly it in front of you right now. And we could give General George, you've done the tablet, have you done it? So you could fly this thing from your couch, you could pre-program it.
I even could fly it. So.
And you can be on board and fly it. And and we have other versions that are pilot optional. So if you've got some lethal force mission you need to do, and you want to pilot in the cockpit to look and see what he's shooting at with the missile or whatever, then we have that version too. So this is a really important concept. If you're looking at the mission lens through the Z-axis, and you could say, I'm going to have contested logistics now that I didn't think I was going to have 5 years ago. I can use firmware, software, autonomy, AI to take a legacy system and not have to buy a new piece of central hardware, and I can make that system be better in this new environment. And that's the thinking that needs to come. And General George has been a leader in this, by the way, and he and I have talked about this for 2 years now, I think. How do we do these kinds of augmentations?
One final question, 30 seconds each, because I know you all want to talk about this. Golden Dome, since we're here at Reagan, how do you make Golden Dome the most effective so we don't have a lack of a follow-through like Reagan had with the Star Wars idea of the 1980s?
I would agree with Dan. I think Mike Gutlein, we first pick the right people to be in charge of it, give them the right authorities to make sure that they can do it, and resources. And the Army's going to play a big role in that. I think what we're also going to get is a lot of things that are going to help us back with what we're doing for integrated air and missile defense, so I'm encouraged by it.
You iterate very quickly. You don't try and build the entire thing and let it sink under its weight of the financial and the engineering problems. You pick different parts of the problem you want to solve. You solve them as quick as you can, and then you move on to the next one, you move on to the next one, you come back to the other ones and iterate again and make it better. And if they do that, they'll stay within budgets, they'll get a lot better technology faster, and they'll get capabilities on orbit more quickly.
The B-21 program was the most effective that we've had most recently. It was on time, on target, on budget. It was because of management and the fact that they said, this is what we're going to have to begin with, and they stayed away from multiple changes on it. You have to do the same thing when it comes to the Golden Dome. And one last thing, we have to recognize the need for spectrum and the protection of spectrum for for Golden Dome.
Yeah, that's a critical point. And I would just add, we're going to need to marshal all of U.S. industry to contribute to this program. It's so big and so ambitious that we need companies, we've partnered with some of these, so I'm allowed to say their names, NVIDIA, IBM, these are the leaders in their industry, Meta for artificial intelligence models, et cetera. We need to find and make it accessible to big commercial companies, small commercial companies, startups, and the existing big aerospace and defense companies. Because if you don't have all of those together, marshaled together, working on this in a flexible way, it'll be really hard to execute.
Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for this fascinating conversation. Let's give them a round of applause, everybody.
Thank you, Carla.